In affirming that God is not a being, I've certainly held off idolatry, but have I left us thereby in an intellectual lurch, doomed simply to remain silent about God? If God cannot be in any sense defined, how do we explain the plethora of theological books and arguments? After all, the same Thomas Aquinas who said that God cannot be placed in any genus also wrote millions of words about God. The 33rd chapter of the book of Exodus gives us a clue as to the resolution of this dilemma. Moses passionately asks God to reveal his glory to him, and Yahweh acquiesces. The Lord specifies, saying, "I will make all my goodness pass before you, but you cannot see my face, for no one shall see me and live." God then tells Moses that while the divine glory passes by, God will place his servant in the cleft of a rock and cover Moses' eyes. "Only then," he says, "will I take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." God can indeed be seen in this life, but only indirectly, through his creatures and effects. We can understand him, but only obliquely, glimpsing him, as it were, out of the corners of our eyes. We see his back, as it's disclosed in the beauty, the intelligibility, and the contingency of the world that he's made. I first encountered Thomas Aquinas' arguments for God's existence when I was 14. And the experience changed my life. They gave me a sense of the reality of God that I've never lost. Thomas formulated those 5 arguments for God's existence when he was here at the Dominican convent of Santa Sabina in Rome. They say that Thomas would walk at high speed around this cloister when he was deep in thought. He gave us 5 arguments. I'll just develop one of them. The one I think is the most fundamental, the most basic. It's called the argument from contingency. Contingency is something that's really part of our very ordinary experience. It names the fact that things come into being and they pass out of being. Think for a second of a great, majestic summer cloud that billows up and then fades away in the course of a lazy August afternoon. It comes into being, and then in a very evanescent way, it passes out of being. Now think of all the plants and flowers that have grown up and then withered and faded. Think of all the human beings who have come and gone. Psalm 90 says, "Lord, teach us to remember the shortness of our lives, that we're like grass that grows in the morning and by evening withers and fades." The Psalm says, "Our lives are over like a sigh." Even those things that seem so permanent. Think of a great mountain range like the Rocky Mountains. If we had over the many eons and millennia a time-lapse camera that could film the emergence of the Rocky Mountains, their endurance for a long period of time, and then their erosion, and then we speeded up that film, the Rocky Mountains would look for all the world like that fleeting summer cloud. Well, that's the starting point of Thomas's proof. Things come into being and they pass out of being. And this means something. It means they don't carry within themselves the reason for their own existence. We have to explain them by appeal to an extrinsic cause. So, go back to that summer cloud. You say, well, what causes it to be? Well, when you mention the moisture in the air, you mention the wind, you mention the atmosphere, and that's fair enough as far as it goes. But as any meteorologist will tell you, those things too are contingent. They come into being and pass away. So you go a step further and you say, well, they're caused by the jet stream, which is caused by the movement of the planet. Oh, but the planet itself is contingent. Scientists tell us it came into being 4 billion years ago, and it too will one day pass away. Okay, another step. The planet's caused by, events within the solar system, within the galaxy. But those too change, coming into being and passing out of being. So you say, okay, they're all grounded in the great structures of the universe. Scientists have told us the universe itself came into being 13 billion years ago through the Big Bang. Here's the point. We have still not explained the existence of that summer cloud. Aquinas concludes, if we are to avoid an infinite regress, which finally explains nothing at all, we must come finally to some reality which does exist through itself. We must come finally to some necessary being whose very nature it is to be. This, he says, is what people mean by God. Then he makes this connection. Keep that proof in mind, and then remember the answer that Moses got when he asked God, if they ask for your name, what will I tell them? And the Lord responded, I am who I am. Not one being among many, not one contingent reality among many, but God says, on Thomas's reading, I am the one whose very nature it is to be. This is what Christians mean by God.